What's up, guys? Back here with Eastern Shore Talk Around Town, and this time we've got Nevin. And Nevin, three quick questions for you.
Gotcha.
Question number one: what does the term self-care mean to you?
Self-care means to me taking care of your mind, body, and spirit each and every day, and doing everything that you can do to uplift those three things and make yourself a better person than yesterday.
And what are some things you do for self-care?
Get my sleep, 6 to 8 hours of sleep, track my macros, work out about 4 to 5 times a week. 3 is cool, and also stretch. And also talk about your problems and your aspirations. It's very important to manifest.
Awesome. And what's something you've been watching lately that you've enjoyed?
Of course, football. I got more into boxing, MMA, and that's pretty much it. I listen to a couple podcasts and whatnot too.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us on Eastern Shore Talk Around Town, and we'll catch you next time, guys. Take care.
Thank you.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to Eastern Shore Talk, your podcast for all things self-care and movies. If this is your first time, we're glad to have you. We're on episode 40. We're in the middle age for the podcast now. My name is Jay Watson.
And I'm Cathy Castle.
And Cathy and I are going to talk about something that's it's kind of been a topic that in the past was something that kind of stuck in my craw, and I'm kind of seeing it kind of everywhere I go as a single person, even on the Hallmark Channel, and I'll talk about that, is the social stigmas around being single in this country and how that's kind of frowned upon by certain folks in society and why that is. And we're going to get into that a little bit. But first thing we're going to do is do our normal check-in. So what's been going on in the castle?
What's going on in the castle? Man, usually I think about that a little bit before I get on. I think that what I need to probably do is take a little bit of my own advice from the last podcast about holiday stress. And I feel like I've been spending some time getting the rest of the December calendar together and figuring out what everybody wants to do and, what are must things as a family. And I found myself a little amped up. And I'm like, okay, I got to go listen to my own advice, about keeping it simple, and which we haven't done. We haven't done that at all. So I've been a bit of a hypocrite this week, I would say. Honestly, busy, trying to fit in as much as I can. That 2-week ticker down to Christmas, man, is like red alert.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks tomorrow. So it's funny. Like it seems to come faster and faster every year as we get older.
And I knew that Thanksgiving was late, so that Christmas was just gonna pop. It was gonna be
quicker. Yeah.
But despite the fact that I that, you still find yourself in a scramble. But I'm trying to think what we did even over the weekend. I think we did a lot of trying to get straight. We planned a little trip with the kids after the holiday. So, sitting down with computer time and doing some ordering of gifts, since we all don't go to malls these days. We shop online. That's just a whole thing, right?
Yeah. So you and your channel marker team went and saw Red One. We can talk about that at the end as your thing you've watched lately. So
yeah, I've been a movie junkie in the Christmas realm this week. Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of switch gears from last week. Last week I had some complaints about the Chick-fil-A drive-thru. So this week, this week I'm going to give some props out to the town of Easton and how awesome the Christmas lights up and down the streets that they do every year.
Yeah.
And it seems like they've
now that you're in town.
Now that I'm in town. And it seems like to me like they've expanded them because I don't remember there always being lights on Marlborough Avenue in front of where my store is, but there are now. There are candy canes that are lit up on the light poles.
I felt like there may have been some additional lights put up around town. So
Yes.
that like on what is the road that the Tidewater's on? Is that Harrison?
Harrison Street.
I felt like there's some newer lights there. I could be wrong. And then I'm wondering if they moved some of the other lights out, like you said. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
really cool though. And I like how, they're white lighting the trees.
yeah. They've seemed to expand it. They even have lights out there on that road behind Target. The little Christmas tree shaped lights out there. If you're driving that back road going on to St. Michael's Road, they've got lights out there. And what's cool for me is, since I've got to drive by the firehouse to go home every evening, the firehouse does theirs. They
Oh,
like they do it. That's like a thing around here. People take their kids to see the firehouse Christmas lights.
well,
It's
and
like
then
a
they
big
have the
deal.
train garden inside. Have you gone inside to see the train?
Not in many years, but
Do
yeah, I
it.
knew about that. Yeah.
I
So
like
it's
it. I
all,
love a light ride. I love a light ride. And there's lots of places that still decorate. I hear, and I haven't gone, that one of the roads in Mulberry Station development, that it's neighbors out doing neighbors. And that
mm.
there's a lot of I've seen videos on Facebook. So I really want to go around and check out what everybody's doing.
I know Sandy Point State Park does a big thing where they have it's like their thing where it's a drive where they set up millions of lights. And
I haven't done that one. I've never done that.
I went many years ago, but I've not gone since.
I've done the
Oh,
Ocean City one.
I was gonna say Ocean City's got a big deal too. So
And then some people say in Caroline County, is it? I don't know if it's a town, a neighborhood, whatever, called Two Johns,
it's
and
it's
that
a it's a development. It's like
is it a
a
development?
it's a community. Yep.
Somebody said that's pretty impressive.
It's between Preston and Denton. Yep.
Okay, so I want to check that out as well. So get your hot chocolate on, or go to Starbucks, get in the car.
And there's always that house, and I don't know if they still do it because I haven't actually driven back from the Bay Bridge coming east on 50 for a while to this time of year to notice is
I did that last night.
there's a house if you're coming from the Bay Bridge coming back to Easton, like a ranch house back off Route 50, right there at the first entrance to get onto Longwoods Road if you're coming
I know.
towards Easton.
Yeah,
And the whole house is framed out in
I
white
remember
lights.
that house. I did. I couldn't tell you if it was up last night or not. I wasn't probably paying attention.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've come back that way this time of year to notice one way or
Yeah.
another. So
Oh gosh, last night was so foggy. What? There's been some fogginess.
it was bad this morning, and apparently there was the parents were upset that there was no fog delay because it was bad. I drove over to Caroline County around 9 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock I couldn't hardly see. So
I was worried about the kids. I really was. Luckily, I have Life 360, so I can check their location and know that they got to school safely. You'd worry about that when they drive themselves. I mean, I know. I don't know. Yes.
so this week, Kath and I are going to get into a topic, talk about the social stigmas around people being single and how folks are sometimes kind of treated some kind of way because they're single. And it's something that I've kind of experienced. I mean, I still experience it today being single, but I've experienced it pretty much most of my life, as I said, periods of time when I've been single. And it used to frustrate me. It kind of makes my eyes roll now because it makes no logical sense that people feel some kind of way about someone being single. And I put a question up on my Facebook on the Eastern Shore Talk group page on Facebook, asking if people felt any outside pressures or self-imposed pressures as a single person, and quite a few said yes to either or both. And I know for me, Kathy, it was hard enough going through some, my younger years and
Yeah.
struggling in the ways I was struggling, and I was choosing relationships, for the wrong reasons, and I was imposing a lot of pressure on myself internally. So I certainly didn't need any extra pressure to be making unhealthy choices, but I've certainly had several times throughout my life, and even now at 57 years old, if I run into someone that I haven't seen for a while, one of the first things they'll almost always ask me is, "Are you dating anybody?"
Hmm.
It's like that question that people ask of someone they haven't seen that they may not know whether they're single or whatever. It's one of the first things that pops up in a conversation. And
Even if somebody does it, do you find that that's interesting to me? So like I don't think I ask people that. Like I think I would have to know somebody pretty well and know that maybe they were interested in finding another relationship to say that. But do you find that it's just common that somebody doesn't even know you that well might say that?
no, it's typically someone that knows me pretty well, someone that I go back,
Okay.
quite a ways with. And it's somebody. It's usually not always, but usually someone that I'll run into that I haven't seen for many years and
Yeah.
may not be aware. But I just find it odd that in the course of trying to catch up for a few minutes and make small
Hmm.
talk, that's typically one. Not always, not everybody does it, but that's usually one of the first questions that. And it's funny how people determine that that's the question they want to ask to find out how well someone is doing, like as if
Yeah.
being single or in a relationship is a determinant to happiness, either or. And
Right.
as you and I both know, we talked about this before we came on. You can be both. You can be happy or unhappy in either situation. So that not one or the other is
100%.
a has a monopoly on happiness. It just doesn't. But I want to before we go any further, I want to give a couple disclaimers. Viewer discretion, listener discretion may be advised because, well, first of all, I want to say this, and we've said this before when we were talking about relationships. I am not advocating for people to run out tomorrow and get divorces. I'm not advocating for people to end relationships. I'm simply talking about the fact that there should not be a stigma around those that are single. However, having said that, to me, there is a direct correlation to why our divorce rate is so high and why so many relationships fail, such a high percentage of relationships fail. There's a direct correlation to that and what people think of the pressure of being single before they make the choice to get into that relationship.
Yeah.
There's a direct correlation. So I'm going to talk about that. So for you folks that are in relationships, especially those of you who may have been in long-term relationships, I'm probably going to say some things that are going to
I'm
sound.
representing that crew today.
I'm going to say some things that are going to kind of sound a little. It's going to sound like I'm directed at you, but it's not because I've done the things I'm going to talk about. I've done, so I'm not
Right.
throwing shade. So I just want to get that out there so people don't think, boy, Jay is just is anti-relationship. He doesn't want anybody to get together.
Jay
That's not
Spice.
the case at all. I want people to get together healthy, and because of the
Hmm.
stigmas around being single, whether it's self-imposed pressures or pressures from family or friends that with these questions and they'll say, hey, I got a friend I can set you up with. These kind of things where they maybe unintentionally or intentionally kind of push you in that direction, and it's all kind of tied together. We're going to kind of get into that. I can't get rid of this
I
cough
think
for any
you're
time.
allergic. Are you allergic to the podcast?
No, it's when I talk a lot, it makes me cough more. If I'm sitting still not doing much, I don't cough much at all. So it's just one of those things.
Lingering.
So yeah, I just
No,
want you folks to know I'm not anti-relationship at all.
no, and I think this is a fun important topic to talk about, and you come from perspective of being a single person at this point in time. I come from this perspective of somebody being married for 32 years. So I think this is will be a good conversation
Mm-hmm.
for us to have. And I have children that are single, so I have some perspectives too, and I think it's worth talking about because when you brought the topic to my attention, I thought about it for a minute, just like I always do. Jay, the way this usually works is Jay comes up with a topic. He's responsible. He's the tech man. He's the tech man. He's the idea man. And I thought about this one, and I thought, you know what? This is such a under discussed topic, right? And why is that? I don't even have an answer for that, but I don't really hear people talking about that often. So I think it's very important to talk about it because I think it is tied to self worth,
Mm-hmm.
self value of of how people feel
Mm-hmm.
about themselves. So I think it's a good elephant in the room topic to
A,
talk about.
a skewed version of what they think. is happiness, but they convince themselves when it's not necessarily the case. But yes,
Right. Because you and I come from two totally different lifestyles, but it doesn't mean I'm happier than you. You might be happier than me at times.
right.
You don't have to I may envy your want to come over in your corner and live your lifestyle. Some days you might want to be
Yeah,
in mine.
that dynamic probably goes back and forth. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
But it doesn't mean one of us is happier than the other. That is for sure. Because that comes from within and really trying, and that's what we try to do with this podcast, is really try to, you know, self-worth, self-care, the self-value. But anyway, what's on your mind? Talk about what you're doing.
So, I'm an analytics kind of guy. I'm a
Yeah,
numbers, statistics kind of guy,
I like that
and
about you, Jay.
and we've talked about this a few times. Where depending on what source you look at, roughly 55% of marriages fail.
Right.
Roughly 80% of just relationships in general fail. So, a how we as a country, how we as a society have been going about getting the relationships is not working. The
Right.
numbers tell you that. That's number one.
Right.
And
I,
number two, regardless of what your preference is for who you choose as a partner, regardless of that, the the logical thought process, at least for me, is if, in other words, it would be like a game of musical chairs. If everyone who was single stood up and then you walked around the chairs and then the music stopped and then you had to find a partner and sit down in a chair or two chairs together with a partner, there are going to be people left standing because the numbers in this country don't align so that everyone will have a partner. So
yeah.
there has to be single people at any given time, always. The numbers just will never, ever, ever, ever line up exactly. Think
Right.
about they have to live within a certain, typically live within a certain geographical, circumference of where you live. They got to be in a certain age range. They got to have, the same religious backgrounds. The
Values.
yes. So the those who fit in your box of what qualifies as a partner for you, it is going to be small anyway, or should be. So then you live in Easton, where now you dwindled that because the population, or let's just say the mid shore versus New York City.
Hmm.
You just, in other words, it's just never going to work so that everyone's can always mathematically have a partner. So there's no good logic that says, or no historic evidence that says marriage is the way. Marriage is a sure way to happiness. There's nothing in our history that says that as a country. Nothing. Now, if you happen to be one of the rare, by the numbers, people or couples that are in a legitimate, healthy relationship that has lasted a while, count your blessings. They're rare.
For real.
And I feel like, and you and I have talked about this before, if you were to take everyone who's in a relationship right now, whether that's married or they are in a committed relationship of some kind with someone,
Hmm.
and this is going to rub people the wrong way. If you're looking, if success in a relationship is being healthy, in other words, it's balanced, it's two people who are in it for the right reasons, it's partners who work together to grow and nourish that relationship to further themselves as a couple. If that's a determinant of a successful relationship, most relationships that exist right now should not be. They don't fit that criteria. They just don't. Because those numbers I talked about, 55% of marriages fail. Think about how many marriages that are still together that do not belong together,
That's true, right?
or relationships that are, I know I could list probably a dozen right now, and I'm not throwing shade because
No.
I was the president of the Picking People for the Wrong Reasons Club. That was me. I've done all that stuff.
But there's
So
people that I think what you're saying is that, I mean, I also believe there's societal pressure, and that I do worry about young people. I have four of those young people, And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it does seem like a societal sign of success if you're married or you have a partner of some sort.
Yes.
And I don't know. Does it go back to the beginning of time, Adam and Eve? I have no idea where that comes from. Obviously, we want human companionship too, but I don't know how it came as a sign of success. Um, and that people feel stigma from not having that. But I do worry about the young people now because, well, like you said, there's a lot of people together that maybe shouldn't. Maybe they survive that we shouldn't be together, but we're gonna stay together because
Yep.
we share a house. We can't afford to not live together. We don't want to separate because of our kids. I think
It's
there is a lot.
familiar. Yep. Yep.
But we didn't have our Gen X up and boomers. We didn't have all the social media. Now you have the social media, and I feel like there's more pressure than ever on these young people. And I'm
Yep.
not saying people are, you know, immediately marrying. Maybe some of them are waiting a little longer, but I think that more of that pressure is in your face with social media, right? And I I don't know. I do worry. I worry about the young ones because I do feel like dating is a lot different than being married, and it's just a lot. It just is. Marriage is hard. I've done it for a long time. You change, it's like a roller coaster ride. I am lucky enough to be happy and content and have grown with the person I'm with, but it's a lot.
You asked a minute ago. You said, I wonder if it started back in caveman days. Wonder how that status of a relationship meaning success. Here's my thoughts on this, and I've thought about this all week as I've thought about this episode. I wonder if psychologically we, because all right, so I'll use myself as an example. Jay, as an individual, back in the past, had determined in his mind that to fit in, to have what I wanted, to X, Y, and Z, I had to be in a relationship. So because we, meaning society, have as individuals determined that in our own life that is what is required to find happiness, we project that on everybody else because that's the way we have gone about it, or that's the way we believe it should be gone about. We think that our family and friends that are single, that's we believe that that's the way they should go, and even whether it's intentional or unintentional, we ask those questions like, "Are you dating anyone? Hey, I've got this friend I can set you up with." Blah 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 blah. And now, like you said, Kathy, there's social media.
Mm.
So as we know, and we all have been guilty of it, you and I included, social media is the place where we put our best foot forward. We
Yes.
show the very best of ourselves. Sometimes we we overdo it. We put a image out there that is not at all representative of the reality of how happy we may or may not be. So now, especially with younger people who do not have the relationship track record to kind of understand the trappings of all that kind of stuff, they're looking at their friends, their social circle, and seeing pictures of vacations where everything looks great, and family gatherings that everything looks great, and couples activities that everything looks great, and they're like, "Wow, those couples look like they're so happy. I want me some of that." Well, the fact is, like we just talked about, probably those couples that are doing that narcissist. Let me show you an image that isn't true to what it is. They're not what they're showing you. So because 55% of marriages fail says, and 80% of relationships to fail says, that's not the case. If you take just by the numbers and you take all the relationships that are projected as images on social media, 80% of them have not worked out or are not going to work out. So if you scroll down your Facebook page and you see 10 vacation pictures of 10 couples, guess what? Same time next year, 8 of those 10 are not going to be together. But yet, they want you to believe this is the way to go. So it doesn't make any logical sense. There's just no correlation between being in a couple or not being in a couple to guarantee of happiness.
Right. I feel like everybody should almost have a little counseling before they get married too. You know what I mean? It's like, where do we get our images of couples? I'm sitting here thinking, like, are we looking at celebrities? Are we looking at Princess Kate and William? Like, I mean, I know Marty and I don't march around like Kate and William. Like, we're like, hi, how are you? I said we just went to 2 parties the last 2 weekends. He's over here and I'm over there. We're like, you wouldn't. We showed up together, we left together, but we weren't together at the party because I'm thinking after 34 years of being together, I see you every single day. I'm gonna go visit somebody I haven't seen. But
Right.
what? And we're good with that. But what do we put in our mind of what we're supposed to do? And then comes all the things, jealousy or expectations you can't meet. It's just there's a lot of work to be done to be a couple, whatever your couple is.
I remember when we had we had Tristan on and we talked about relationships.
Yeah,
Long way back in the day when we first started the podcast.
yeah,
And we talked about some of the reasons that are the wrong reasons to enter into a relationship. We said back then, or at least I said back then, the number one wrong reason why people get into relationships is fear of being alone. So it's bad enough that we put this self-imposed pressure on ourselves, this because we haven't done enough self-love and self-care to have a strong enough sense of self to be able to stand on our own 2 feet, single, and like legitimately enjoy the time to ourselves for ourselves. So that way, a little bit down the road, we bring a better sense of self. We bring a better J into relationships. So now we're on the successful side of that those bad statistics where relationships fail. That's why this whole thing of the stigma of being single kind of ties into self care, because if we're working on ourselves enough to have a strong enough sense of self, we don't care what people think if we're single. I know I don't. I'm tired of getting the questions for sure, but I'm not going to lose sleep, and it does not motivate me to make a decision in any certain kind of way.
well, you and I had talked about earlier. I was looking at, I have to always look at my articles. Um, that I was surprised. I was reading that there is a rise in singleness, right, in America, the Canada, UK, and that actually statistics say there's more single people than married or common law relationships. I was surprised at that for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they said the reason for this trend could be the fact that people are dating longer, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea to date longer so that you really know if you're meant to be together, and that people are marrying later in life. People are divorcing more frequently, and that people are valuing their careers over relationships. Um, and I think we kind of really already said this, but an important note to remember is that a lot of people believe that a marriage will bring them happiness, and we've kind of talked about that, but not necessarily, right?
Yeah. Again, it's that well, the social status that we talked about. It's a form of success, or it's viewed as that. It's fool's gold. It's
Yeah,
it's part of the mental health thing in this country where we as a society we don't work enough on our mental health to be able to be secure within who we are, how we think and feel about ourselves, to be strong enough to make a healthy choice, do the things for the right reasons. It's funny. I love you were talking about people dating longer. So here's my thing about the word dating and the definition of dating, because to me there's two different.
although I don't think the young ones call it that anymore. I don't know. I get in trouble with my kids all the time because I'll say, "Are you dating?" and they'll be like, Oh, like I don't know what they think dating means.
Well, to me, it's there's two different definitions of dating.
They'll
Number
say we're
one,
talking.
yes. Number one, you can go on dates and not be dating someone. In other words, if
Yeah,
you're just in it for companionship,
yeah,
you are upfront with the person. You just say, look, I just like meeting new people,
yeah.
going and having dinner with someone to get to know them, to meet them or whatever. You're going on individual dates, and as long as you're upfront with that, there's nothing at all wrong with that.
Right.
But you're not dating any one of those people. Now, once you have done the individual dates, then you determine, okay, I'd like to get to know person X a little bit more. So we're going to be consistent, and you're going to start being focusing your attention on dating that person.
Accountable to them, maybe. Or,
Yes. Now, here's my question. And I would have never thought 20 years ago that I would say this because I was the biggest hopeless romantic that there ever was back in the day. But as I've kind of grown and gotten wiser, hopefully, and kind of my mindset has shifted a lot in a more healthy way. Why do why do we date someone in order to get to know them? In other words, why can't we spend time with them as friends? Maybe be around them several times in a group setting. Get to
yeah,
know them first for a while
yeah.
before we commit to dating that person. So, in other words,
I agree.
you just probably organically will find stuff out about that person during that 6 months or year of just maybe you have common friends, so you all kind of hang out together, on the weekends or whatever.
And I
Do
think that
that.
is a mistake. I think that is a mistake of a lot of people, right? Because if you could kind of be friends, like you said, and get to know how people act around other people, because sometimes I think of course, I'm thinking about my kids right now. People do so much with just that person. That's different. That's
It's
different.
it's pressure, Kathy, because if you're all right, I'm committed to this person. You decided pretty quickly, okay, I'm committed to getting to know this person. Then there's this pressure of, okay, if I find something out that I don't like, it ends this thing. Or if, uh, or what also happens is those two people, or both, one of them or both of them, are afraid to talk about the things that they fear might break the relationship, so they don't talk about the hard stuff because they're afraid of they're not going to get an answer they don't like, and it's gonna cause turmoil or it's going to end the relationship. Whereas if you're just friends hanging out and the topic of I don't know spirituality or values or whatever just comes up organically within the group, there's no pressure for anybody. There's
Yeah.
nothing's going to fail by anybody expressing how they feel. It's just and as you accumulate this knowledge about this person over a little bit of time, then you say, okay, person X, why don't you and I go out, just you and I, and start heading this in the direction of you and I getting to know each other individually instead of, you know, we pass a note in high school and say, do you like me? Yes or no? Yes.
Circle.
Okay, now we're dating.
Yeah.
And it's like we go from A to Z and we skipped all the letters in between in the alphabet and we wonder why nothing ever works out.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to, everybody is in a hurry to fail. Because as we've talked about, the numbers say the relationship's going to fail. Why not take an extra? I know if you're 25 years old, the last thing you want to do is wait an extra 6 months for anything. Because none of us
That's
at 25 want to wait for anything. We got happiness in our hand instantaneously. We're not going to wait 6 months for someone to show us who they are before we determine if we like them. We know right away. We know right now. I see them across the room. I want to date that person. I did that. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. Yeah.
But don't you think we like I, as a culture, as a society, don't you think we do things that we think are going to make us happy and they're only temporarily? Like you get a new car, what are you really happy for? What, two
A month.
months, months, whatever. You get a new puppy. I mean, whatever. I get a new outfit. I'm happy for a week, but it's the same thing with relationships. I mean, maybe I'm minimizing that too much, but it's gonna wear off. That honeymoon is gonna wear off. It should. That's the way it is. So who the more the question is not who makes you happy, but who makes you unhappy, and can you deal with that? Can you deal with the unhappy part? Because anybody can make anybody happy, probably.
And the thing about that, Kathy, is, and even in the good and healthy relationships, there are going to be hard times. There just are.
Oh,
But
100%.
you have to have built enough equity in that relationship, enough time together, to have learned how to navigate together, to learn how to argue together, to learn how to disagree together, to get past that,
Well,
move on to the next thing.
and men and women are so different.
Yes.
Marty will look at me sometimes and say, "How come you can look at me like you hate me?" And I said, "Because at that moment I do. But it doesn't mean I'm going to hate you like in 2 hours. But right now, yeah, not liking you."
Yeah. It's not
Like
that
men,
it's
the
not that
men
you
don't.
hate him. You probably hated what he did in that moment. Yeah.
But I don't think men do that. So I mean, we are definitely on different planets, men and women sometimes, and I don't know. It makes me laugh sometimes because, I've been around. I'm old enough and been around this relationship long enough to know that about myself. I'm like, I roll in and Marty's easy though. Marty's an easy person. I'm probably more difficult than him, honestly.
Oh, there's no question in my mind that you're more difficult than Marty is.
I'm more difficult than him. Yeah.
But I like that you said, um, people convince themselves that they're happy, or they think this idea of happiness. Here's what I like to do, Kathy. I break our life choices into three categories.
Mm.
There are the things we require, the things we want, and then the third category, which is the category that is the one that trips us up all the time, is the category of things we want, but we convince ourselves that we require.
Mm.
Meaning, and we'll just use relationships, or being within a relationship in that category. We convince ourselves psychologically, for any number of reasons. I've done it. Think about it. Think about the things we require in life: food, water, air, and I'll just throw shelter and family in there just for the sake of argument. So those are the only five things we require in our life. Everything else is a want. And even if you don't, if you even if you break it down into, not like to actually survive, but just to have a true sense of deep fulfillment, there's those five things play a role in having to being that. So everything else in life is a want. And wants are
Right.
fine. Goals, career goals, personal goals, all those things are great. It's not the what, it's the why. It's okay, I want to be in a happy relationship. Great. We all would like that. Even Jay Watson, who seems to be the most anti relationship sounding person on the earth
No,
right now.
you're not.
Uh, there,
I
there, uh, However, I'm not going to head in that direction just because society says I'm supposed to do that. That fits in that category of, it's a want, but I've convinced myself I have to have it. And you can, it's substances, gambling, food for some people. There's any number of things. Relationships. That was my thing. That's that tricky. That's the category where we swear I can only be happy if dot 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 dot. That substance, that food, that relationship. Whatever it is.
Do you feel that, look at this article a little more too, and it's talking about, you know, uh, research around singles facing prejudice and discrimination. And they're talking about, I mean, we've kind of talked about maybe how other people perceive somebody like, oh, who are you dating? Or did you find anybody yet? And I don't know if that's like, you'll never find me saying that to my children because I want them to, I don't need to marry them off. Maybe that's because I'm a boy mom, but I want them to make sure that this is going to be for all the reasons you and I have talked about, that this is the right one for them.
Well, let me say
Um,
this real quick. I need to say this. This is important.
yeah.
Just because someone is single does not make them undesirable.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. People look at, say, "Ooh,
That
what's
must be
wrong?
wrong. Yeah.
What's wrong with them? They can't find a partner."
But you could argue the other way around because there are also people that have to have somebody. You and I talked about this earlier before we got on. You know, I know people that,
I know a lot of people.
they get a divorce or their significant other may tragically have passed away, and they have to fill that void. Like they have to have somebody, and I worry about those people. That because it might not still fill your cup.
Well, not just that, Kathy, but you're chasing a moving target because
Yeah.
you're talking about another person who you have zero control over. You're depending on a person that we have another person who none of us have any control over the other person. You're depending on that to make us
And it's
happy, and we have zero control over it. It makes no logical sense.
and it's like Marty has always said this, and it makes sense. So if I put all my eggs in the Marty basket, that is 100% what's going to make me happy, then that's not fair to him or to me. He's part of the basket, but I have to have a multitude of other things that is going to make myself happy. And that's not his responsibility to
Yes,
make sure I'm happy and
yes.
kept,
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
So, and I have zero expectations of that from him. It's not his job. It's not his job to make me happy.
hmm
It
I'm glad
really
you
is.
said that because even if you don't consciously think that or don't intentionally do that, what you're doing when you are entering into a relationship, hoping that that relationship is going to make you happy, you're putting the responsibility of your happiness onto that other person, and it
Yeah,
does both parties a disservice.
it really does.
It you know, yeah, it's
And I think there's I don't know. I've been out of the game for a minute, but maybe there's a bit of jealousy too. It's like I'm thinking back to earlier years. I know there was things that Marty needed to feel complete for himself. I know that he's an exercise guy. Here we go, the exercise thing, right? But that doesn't mean he doesn't want to spend time with me. That means he needs some alone time, and you gotta. There comes a trust thing too. You gotta have some trust and um, just not be so darn dependent on the other person. Like you gotta give them some space. Let them do the hobbies or the habits that they need to feel. Let them take care of their self-care, I guess is what I'm saying as well.
I do think Kathy probably, and I'm going to kind of go in a psychological route here. I do think there are those that maybe push family and friends into that dating pool because
Yeah.
of resentment. And let me explain.
Mm,
Because if they see that their friend or family member can be happy outside of a relationship, does that make them question? Wait a minute, am I going about things the right way? I've done it this way, and I've found success, and you know there can't be any other way. Um, am I explaining that right to you? They're like, wait a
yeah.
minute. It makes them question their own judgment. Like, wait a minute, I've thought that the relationship was the way to go all along. I don't want to see another way because that way it means that I've been wrong all along. Does that make maybe that's a better way to explain it?
Yeah.
That's probably on the rare side of why people do that, but
I'm looking at this article too, and it's talking about the financial discrimination of people that are single too. Like, I guess there's more tax benefits if you're married. I don't know. I
yes,
guess.
mm-hmm.
Is health insurance better if you're a couple? What are some of the things that people that choose their life to be single have to struggle a little harder at financially because of that choice, which is kind of a shame.
It is if you break it down per person. Yes, believe
Yeah.
me, because I've done it myself.
Uh,
It's more expensive per person to live single. Because think about it. Let's just take my situation where I live now, and then if you were to add a partner, so you now have two incomes. you know, paying for all the same stuff. Now, yes, you're now there's twice as much food to buy, but you're not really using any more utilities, really.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and it's not like it's drastically different, but it's less expensive if you live with a partner, whether you're married or whether you're just living together in a committed whatever.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
little bit easier financially for sure.
And I thought this was kind of a weird thing. Like, Marty just lost his brother, and he was single, and he didn't have a wife, and he did not have kids, and he was young. He's 54, 55. Anyway, I'm like, that man worked all his life, and like, because there's no wife or there's no children or no significant other, whatever, the that's gone. That social security's gone. It's
Yeah.
not like it goes to his parents or somebody else. And I
Yep.
thought, that's really not fair. I didn't think that's really fair. But I don't make the rules, but I didn't think that's fair to single people. You know what I mean? Like, you just busted it all your life. Um, why shouldn't that money go to somebody else that you choose? You paid into the system.
It's like there's no legacy left behind.
No, and I thought that was a shame.
Yeah.
That was something I'd never thought about before that had happened.
So yeah. So those of you who are in a relationship, please take a minute before you either intentionally or unintentionally ask your single friend or family member about their dating status, because it may or may not be something that they want to hear. It may or may not be something that they may take it as pressure when they've probably already had some, internal pressure already as it is. And look, and I know I need to say this again. If you are in a good and healthy place as an individual, and your goal is to be in a relationship, go for it. Um, but it's
But
just
if you're
it's hard because those things that were shown that those the fool's gold that were shown on social media wants to have us push in that direction. A and B, there are probably some shortcomings within ourselves that leave a hole that we want to fulfill somehow. And one of the logical choices, at least it was for me, is to, hey, I'll get into a relationship, and that will make all that other bad stuff go away. That will fill that void, and it doesn't work that way. It's a square peg in a round hole. Um, at the very
well,
best, it's temporary. You still have the void that was there before. It was
yeah,
just masked over for a little while, and that.
and I think you said it earlier too. That just because you're single doesn't mean you're not desirable. But I think
No,
we put that negative stuff on ourselves.
think
Like,
about it, Kathy. Everybody who's in a relationship now was single at some time.
hmm,
Were they undesirable?
right?
They were single. Everybody's single at some point. Everybody.
When, yeah, yeah,
They actually may be more desirable because if they're single for the right reasons and they're in a good place, they're in such a good place that they're like, man, I love my time alone. If I find somebody great, if not, I'm happy. If they're there in that place, in that headspace, that's who you want to pick.
I would say the same thing about parenting too. Just as we need to be careful about not stigmatizing our single friends, we need to be careful of not stigmatizing our friends that made the decision not to have children. Maybe it was a
Yes.
conscious decision not to have a child. Maybe they couldn't have a child.
Yep.
Maybe financially couldn't have a child. Whatever the reason, I think people feel very a stigma over that too, because you know and some people know they don't, that's just not their in their on their bingo card, and it doesn't mean everybody's got to be a daggone parent. I mean, I think at some level everybody is a parent, whether you're a parent to a
Just
friend,
not biologically. Yeah.
a pet, or a nephew or something. Everybody's got the parenting in them somewhere, but it doesn't mean you gotta have a birth certificate in your house. I don't know, I just think we need to be careful and know that people are individuals, and that being married does not mean that now you're successful and happy. I mean, maybe success and happiness is individually driven. It's
Yes.
not marital status driven.
Your single family or friend might very well be the happiest person that you know.
Yeah.
Truly.
And
That's
they
very
might
possible.
at you because they're sitting happy in their big lounge chair eating their popcorn and nobody's harassing them. Yeah.
So, so yeah, let's, before we get
So
out of here, you got anything else?
you say that that's our message. If you are single, please don't do that to yourself. Please don't do the negative self-talk where you say you're not worthy or you're never going to be happy. Please don't do that to yourself.
No, no.
Reverse that and know that statistics say there's more single people than married people in our country.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now you're in the norm. If you're in that group, right? You're
So
the
we're
majority.
going to normalize
Yeah.
single, that single can be happy.
And
Let's normalize that conversation.
don't forget your single friends. Maybe every now and then they want to be invited to something,
Yep.
and they can tell you no if they don't.
Yeah, if they're uncomfortable, don't automatically assume they're going to be uncomfortable. Ask them. They may just say, "Oh, I'd love to come." And if they're not, the folks that are in a relationship are not going to make them feel out of place in that setting. They're going to impose that on themselves. But if they're not going to feel uncomfortable themselves, ask them. Don't exclude them automatically.
Yeah, yeah. And when you're not looking. That's when love might come find you.
Yep,
Right?
for sure. And people used to tell me that when I was younger, and I was like, "Ah, hooey, you're just throwing words at me. You don't mean anything."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny what we learn when we're older.
What they say, wisdom is wasted.
On
Oh,
the youth. Yeah,
wait, did I just mess that up? I might have messed that up. I don't know. Maybe it's energy's wasted on the youth. I don't know.
I know
It's a
what you
shame
meant.
that it takes
Yeah,
us forever to get some of the
yeah.
wisdom that we need. We wish we could, inject some of that 57-year-old wisdom into the 25-year-old, right?
And sometimes it's not a matter of figuring out what to do. It's finally learning what not to do.
Hmm.
That is the lesson.
Yeah.
So before we get out of here, Kathy, let's switch gears for a few minutes and talk about what we've been watching lately. And I know you and the rest of the channel marker folks went and saw Red One last
Yeah.
week.
We saw Red One, which is with The Rock and
Chris
Captain America,
Evans.
Chris Evans. I like the movie. I don't know. I feel like Christmas movies in the theater get a bad rap. I don't know. Maybe they're just not popular. I don't know what makes a Christmas movie popular in the movies, but I went in thinking this movie's going to be horrible, but we're just going to do it. I liked it. It even made me a little tearful and sappy at the end. But that's who I am. I did I enjoyed that movie, and I would say it's worth seeing.
Yeah,
It's cute.
it was a solid movie for me. I enjoyed it.
Not going to win an Academy Award, but
No,
it's worth the money to go sit
yeah,
and
it's
have.
entertaining, and it's a legitimate Christmas movie because it is about Santa Claus. So it's I mean it cannot be more Christmas than that.
And The Rock's The Rock. The
The
Rock.
Rock is Santa Claus's bodyguard, basically. Yeah, head of
I
security.
mean, he's exactly who you think he's going to be in that movie. And Chris Evans, like a cool dude, like you'd want him to be. So I was happy with the character portrayal.
Yeah, good cast. Yeah,
Yeah,
there could have been. The only thing I would have been lacking would have been a love interest, like a love story of some kind. There
yeah,
really wasn't one. Um, I guess the love story was Santa Claus and his brother,
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
at the end, kind of. Yeah, I
Yeah,
won't give away. Yeah, Santa
yeah.
Claus has a brother. Who knew?
Who knew? And then we haven't seen anything else besides we are in our cycle of family Christmas movie watching. The Home Alones and the that you've seen a million times, but we love to see it. I did see the Christmas Chronicles for the first time. I had not seen that movie. I know there's two of them. We saw the first one. I had not seen that before. Had you seen that, Jay?
I
With
don't think
Kurt Russell.
it doesn't sound familiar.
It was kind of cute. It wasn't what I expected actually. So I hadn't seen that one before.
So I went to the theater last Friday and saw Moana 2, and
Yeah.
it was a cute little movie. I did not see the first one,
Oh, okay.
so I'm like, well, it's animated, so it can't be so deep that I can't figure out what's going on. And that was true. It was a cute movie. it was short. It was only like an hour and a half, so I was like in and
And
out.
nowadays, time.
That's out of the norm these days. Yeah, if anything under 2 hours is short. Um, it was cute, and I finished watching that documentary that you and I were talking about the tsunami from 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
There's four. It's a 4-part series. I finished watching that. It was good. It's just some of the stories are just amazing, and what's come out of it is, at that time, the Pacific Ocean was the only ocean that had a tsunami warning system
Mhm.
because of what happened there. And this one guy he kind of sort of narrates the show, who he was in the Hawaii station that followed, that was keeping track of the sensors in the Pacific Ocean. He was the one who saw the earthquake on his instruments and tried to get the word out, and did end up saving some lives. But he was instrumental in, after that, getting a tsunami warning system in the rest of the oceans of the
Wow.
entire world. So now there's a system that can help give
Mhm.
people warning to get to higher ground and help save lives. So,
That's
uh,
just so scary. That's so unbelievably scary. I can't imagine.
and I did see, I've been doing the whole Hallmark and
I've been bad on
Great
Hallmark.
American Family thing, but I did see, I've enjoyed, it's funny, when we talked about having this topic of stigmas of single friends, I noticed on the Hallmark movies, both the Christmas movies and the
Mhm.
non-Christmas movies on Hallmark, there's always a friend of the main character that's always pushing them to date. Like, you've been single now for a year. It's time for you to get out there and start. And I started when we made this topic, I started seeing that. I'm like, I need to write into Hallmark and say, hold on, you need to have sprinkle in an episode here and there where maybe one character
It's the
find,
uncle, and he's happy.
yeah, I'm like, have one character find happiness single, and have your main character still find that romantic. That's great, but also have a parallel story where someone also finds happiness being single. I know you're the Hallmark Channel, and your like MO is to, like,
Put people together. It's a
couple,
rom com,
yeah,
right?
but
It's a rom com.
yeah, but you gotta, even just if you did one a season, just throw one in there every once in a while.
Yeah, it's a rom com. That's what it is.
And you missed a good voice last night. It was the
I
finale.
know.
Now
I know.
tonight they're going to tell you who the
It's,
winner is.
tonight's the
Tonight
real.
they're going to still all perform, and they had some really good performances last night. Snoop Dogg was crying the whole time, as usual.
Who do
Um,
you, which coach do you think's gonna win?
I think that I'm trying to think of who has who. Now, Sofronio is with Michael Bublé, so it's either my guess. This is just my prediction. It's either going to be Sofronio or Sydney, and Sydney is with Gwen.
Oh,
Sydney's Gwen's person.
I really thought Snoop would win this year.
Well, and I'm okay. I think there's 5 people left. I'm okay with 4 of the 5. The fifth one, the rock star guy, that's Reba's guy. I don't know how he made it this far. It's not, look, none of them are bad singers. They're all talented, but I just felt like there were a lot of much better singers than him. But tonight we find out who wins, and they always have some really really good duets and stuff on what it's their result. They call it the results show because they finally tell us who wins. Um, so that'd be good watching that here
All
in a
right,
little
because
bit.
I'm gonna be able to watch it tonight. Tonight's happening.
And you can
Tonight's
always
happening,
go back on Peacock and watch last night's show.
and you know I
Reruns.
won't.
Yeah, yeah, because you always tell me when I
Do
remind
it.
you, like, I'll watch it. I'll watch the last hour. And you never do. So
I know. But tonight I'm home. I'm home, and I have no reason not to. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna watch the finale.
awesome. Well, guys, we're glad to have you this week. We got some really cool stuff coming up the last few episodes of 2024. So stay tuned for that. We're glad you joined us, and we'll catch you next time, guys. Take care.
Bye.